Mohammed, you've said so many times on this programme, we risk winning the war but losing the peace, and now we have another battle on our hands.
Yes, we do, John, and it points to two contradictions that have been there for a while. The first one is really internal to Hong Kong and China, this notion of one country, two systems. How long can you persist? The second one matters a lot more to global markets and the global economy, which is this increasing notion, whether it is with trade issues, whether it is with information about COVID-19, and now this, that China's internal objectives are inconsistent with its global responsibilities. And it's the second one that we should watch carefully in terms of the impact on markets beyond today.
Mohammed, I've talked for a long time on this programme, I know others have as well, about how naive many Western leaders have been over the last several decades, believing that the Chinese Communist Party would become more like the West. It's not happening. We're at this point of realisation where the West needs to work out what to do next. Do you think there is a consensus on what to do next emerging, not just in the United States, but Europe too?
There's more of a consensus today than there has been for decades, and that consensus really is underpinned by the notion of enough is enough. We've given China a long time. That's what you hear from a lot of Western politicians. And the U.S. and the U.K. will be taking the lead on this Hong Kong issue. What you hear increasingly is, okay, we've got to draw a line, and this time, this line has to be firm.
This pandemic, in the minds of many, including JP Morgan, has reinforced existing trends. Can you speak to that, Mohammed, how it's reinforced this particular trend and unleashed long-term forces that we'll be talking about for quite a while to come?
So really, it has reinforced the sense of deglobalization or peak globalization, if you want to be more optimistic about globalization. And remember, this one is the third blow to globalization in 10 years, and it's by far the biggest one. The first blow came, call it 2010. It came from the household sector, a pushback against the alienation and marginalization of certain segments of the population. And the response to that, the correct response, was let's make globalization more inclusive. There was a recognition that it had not been inclusive enough. The second blow came in 2017 and 2018 with the trade war, and that weaponized economic tools. The third blow, and that second blow was led by governments. This third blow is going to be led by all three segments: households, governments, and companies. Governments, as we just talked about, will increasing tension, increasing weaponization of economic tools. Households, especially in the U.S., unfortunately going to be living with high levels of unemployment for a while, will push back even stronger against the notion of China taking away jobs. And then the third one is going to be companies. We are going to see companies slowly but consistently localize their supply chains as they shift the emphasis from efficiency to resilience.
So, Mohammed, coming out of the last crisis, you coined the phrase, the new normal. And I'm wondering, as we come out of this crisis, how all of these things inform your view. And I know you haven't published on this yet, but just give us the tease on what the new normal 2.0 actually looks like, or what you think it will look like.
So this notion of a new normal 2.0, which is an article that is about to be posted by the Journal of Portfolio Management, it should go up today, says look at everything that was in the new normal, multiply it, but view it as less stable. And it's the following. Absent, and I want to stress, there's nothing predestined about this. It depends on the policy response. But if you don't get a comprehensive policy response, we're going to emerge with even weaker growth dynamics, lower productivity, more inequality, and more artificial financial stability. So the same elements of the new normal, but compounded. And because they are compounded, it's a less stable paradigm. And we've got to be careful, because if that is what we emerge with, then once again, we will hopefully have won the war against a global depression, but we will lose the peace and that is the piece of high, inclusive, and sustainable growth. So we've got to be very careful, and policymakers have to respond accordingly.
I sense from you, Mohammed, that you think to a certain degree it is avoidable, and I'm wondering how you think we can avoid that outcome.
Yes, absolutely. It is avoidable because it's not an engineering problem. It's a political leadership problem. The engineering is pretty clear. We need steps to enhance productivity. And a lot has been said and written on modernizing infrastructure, retooling and retraining labor. 2, we need better aggregate demand policies. The few countries that have fiscal space should act accordingly. 3, we need better safety nets. Household economic insecurity is a big issue in the United States in particular. And if households remain insecure, they'll spend less. It also addresses some of the inequality issues. We need some debt reduction. And finally, we need better global cooperation and a stronger architecture. All that has been well documented. This is not an engineering problem. This is a political leadership. And my hope is that this crisis will act as a catalyst for better policy making.
Mohammed, there will be people screaming at their TV sets right now, asking me to ask the following question. What does everything you've just said mean for financial markets? How do you express the kind of things you're thinking about in markets as an investor?
So I think, starting points matter. Initial conditions really matter. The marketplace has priced in 2 things. One is that we will emerge in a mean reversion way. We will go back to the old system. We will mean revert. And you know what? Most of the time, mean reversion is the right thing. But here we're seeing some pretty fundamental structural changes. We're seeing some old things die. We're seeing new trends emerge. And we're seeing other trends accelerated. It's a different structure. The other thing the market is pricing in, and this has been illustrated by a very powerful calculation by Lizanne Saunders at Schwab that was tweeted out by her. I retweeted it. That shows that the correlation between forward PE and asset values has gone from plus 0.9 to minus 0.9. That is a massive shift. And what it tells you is that the marketplace truly believes that the Fed wedge, the decoupling of asset prices from fundamentals by the Fed, will be maintained for quite a while. So that's our starting position. So the marketplace has already priced in a pretty good outcome relative to this greater uncertainty about what the landscape looks like.